In this tutorial, I'm going to be doing some experimentation on some overdying. I have created some samples here. I have approximately, I don't know, I just did about 20 wraps around my, my forearm. And I'm going to be trying to overdye this. This is a kind of a, I can't really show you very well, but it's a bluish color yarn. And I am going to try and dye it so it's a little bit darker and more of a tonal hand-dyed effect. These are the colors that I'm planning on using, the jacquard colors. I'm not sure how they're going to turn out or how it's going to work, but right now I'm just doing an experiment on these samples. I'm also thinking about adding in this turquoise a little bit, but I'm afraid that this color might be a little bit too bright. So I'm going to start with the turquoise with a very light base and then add these colors on top of that. So that is what my plan is in this process. I'm going to start mixing colors to see how I like the colors turn out. I have already mixed all my colors into these bottles, and I have already soaked my yarn. These are my samples. I have my other yarn soaking over here. But right now I'm just going to experiment a little bit to find out what colors I like together. So I'm going to start with jacquard turquoise, which is this color right here. And I'm just going to add a bit of this to the water I have here. I think I'm going to start with 5 mLs because I'm just doing a small sample right now. And I have no idea how this is going to turn out, so I'm just going to experiment. So it looks like the dye didn't get, it didn't get mixed up all the way, but that's all right. This is just practice anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of my samples. I'm going to leave it wrapped up because the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of kettle dye it, but I want kind of different splotches of different colors for different places. So I'm going to kind of leave it a little bit wound up, but not all the way. So some of the areas might not get as much dye as other areas, which is exactly what I'm trying to accomplish in this process. Now turquoise is, I'm hoping, going to be the lightest color. I'm not sure. We'll see how it turns out. And like I said, some of this hasn't dissolved, but it could just be that this color has been mixed for quite some time. So I'm going to put this in here. Again, I've already soaked it, and it has been soaking in vinegar water. I'm going to need, I think, just a little bit more water in there. And then I'm going to put this in the microwave and cook it for about 2 minutes. So you will see that I dyed the turquoise, and it came out a bit darker. Let me show you the original color. So it did come out a bit darker than the original color. This is the turquoise. And you can see that there's still quite a bit of dye in this water, which means that the 5 milligrams that I added to this bath did not get taken up completely. So when I dye my full batch of sweater's worth of yarn, I probably won't have to use as much as I think because there's still quite a bit of dye left in here. So my next step is going to be to dye with the teal, I believe. I'm going to go with the teal next. This is the next color. This is the next lightest color. And I think I'm going to go with that color next because I want to go from light to dark and try and have the dark color overlay the light, but still have spots where there isn't dark color. So that's where I'm going to go next. So I'm going to twist this a little bit more than I twisted the last one. So there will be more spaces that don't have color. The last one really, it came loose a little bit. I did not do it quite tight enough. And with these samples, it's going to be a little bit different than with the full skeins, because the full skeins are much larger and these samples are very tiny. So I'm going to make it a bit tighter, you can see. So hopefully we'll have some spots where there is no color, or no color of the teal. So now, because the 5 milligrams of the turquoise was still quite a bit, I'm going to go ahead and do 5 milligrams of the, or milliliters, I'm sorry, approximately 5 milliliters of the teal. I'm going to put it in slowly so I can see how much color it's going to give me. I think I'm going to go with just 2 milliliters this time. Because I think I'll go with 3. Because I think that might be enough color. And what I'm going to do is, I don't know if you can see how this is only, there's some more color in one area than another. I'm going to leave it like that. I'm not going to stir this up at all. I'm just going to drop my little skeinlet in where it is and let it do what it does. And then I'm going to cook this for another 2 minutes to let this color set. Okay, so I did the teal next, and it got dark. It got much darker. Again, I can show you another bit. But what I'm finding is that, I don't know if it's just these little samples or what, but I don't know how well you'll be able to see it, but there's not much variation in color. And it could just be the samples, the smaller size samples. And I'm still going to go ahead and continue to experiment with this, but I think what's going to end up happening is I think I'm just going to have to do the whole lot and hope for the best. And at this point, I'm still very happy with this color, but it's still not as tonal as I would like, or more hand-dyed looking than I would like. So, and again, I still had quite a bit of dye in my water here after I heated this up. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the spruce and also the purple jacquard. I might even just skip the periwinkle altogether. So we'll see how it goes. And I'll let you see each step of the process after I dye each color. Okay, I'm going to go with the spruce next. And because there's been so much dye left over in the baths, I am going to try and use less dye in this one. I think I'm going to only go for 2 mLs, if I can measure that out. So I only use 2 mLs on this one. And I'm going to, when I tie my little skeinlet off, I'm going to twist it, but then I'm going to tie off, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist it here, fold it in half, but then tie it, and see how that works. I'm not sure how it will work, but we'll see. It's just going to be a little tiny little thing there. I don't know how much we'll get in there. And again, I'm not going to mix up the water. I'm just going to drop this in. And I will cook it for another, actually I stopped cooking it for 2 minutes. The 2 minutes was getting a little too hot. So I'm going to cook this for about 1.5 minutes. And I'm going to fill up the water a little bit more, I think, because it's not quite on the top. Okay, so I did go ahead and put another ml of dye in the pot, in the water, because I did have to add so much more water to get it to go over that little knot that I made. But obviously I did not need it because this water is still very full of dye. But I am starting to see a little bit more of some variation in this yarn, which is exactly what I was looking for. And this color is coming along fabulously. I really like how this is coming along. And I think I am going to go ahead and do the purple and then see how that comes out. Okay, so for the purple, I think I'm going to go ahead and go with the same 3 mLs of water. Or of dye, and this is dye that I've mixed up, so it's not really straight dye. And what I did was I just used about a tablespoon of the dye powder and then put it in my jar here. And this color looks gorgeous. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the spruce. And I'm going to twist it and then knot it. Because that started to show that we were getting some different variations in color. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, twist it and knot it. And it's going to be a little bit different because I had untwisted it and I'm twisting it again. So there it is, another little knot. And I'm going to dump it in, and I'm just going to let it do its thing. I'm going to put it in the microwave for 1.5 minutes or 1:35 and see how it turns out. Okay, so I'm starting to wonder if it's possible to get to a point where the fiber will not take up any more dye no matter what color it is. Because there's still quite a bit of dye in here. Now, I am seeing more variation with the purple, and I think that if it was darker, it would show up more. But I'm still very, very happy with this outcome. And it makes me more apt to just go for an over dye without doing this experimentation, because this is almost identical to the color that I was looking for. I was looking for a kind of a medium teal turquoise color, and I think that's what I got here. And again, this was the original, so you can see the difference in color. It's just, this is so much more my color than this lighter blue. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up to dye the full lot of yarn, and I'm not going to worry about dyeing the little skeinlets anymore because I got something that I'm very, very happy with, and I don't need to experiment anymore. So I will get set up for the full dyeing, and I will show you that process as well and every step of the way as I go through that. Okay, so here we are with the big pot. Now, this is a pot that I use specifically for dyeing, so I do not use this with food at all. I got this pot specifically for this process, to be able to dye a sweater's worth of yarn in one pot. Now, this part of the tutorial is going to take much longer than the original when doing the samples, because I have to heat the water up. And there's a lot of water in here. I think this is a 25 quart, 16 quart capacity. So there's a lot of water in here. So right now it is not hot. It is cold. And I'm going to go ahead and add the yarn while the water is cold, and along with the dye. And then each time, if the dye does not get fully absorbed into the yarn, then I'm going to have to fill the pot again and start with fresh water, which means it'll take longer to heat up. So I'm going to start with, I used 5 mLs in the small container. Now, I think I'm going to go with 50 mLs. I have a much bigger syringe here. I think I'm going to go with 50 mLs for this much larger thing. I don't know if there's going to be a correlation to it, but because of how well my samples turned out, I'm okay with whatever I get, because the samples turned out much better than I expected on the first try. So I'm going to go ahead and use 50 mLs of dye in this bath here. And we're going to hope that it works. So I'm just going to squirt it in there and get it all around. And again, I'm not going to stir it. I'm just going to put my yarn in here on top of it. Okay, I have now twisted my skeins. I didn't do that before, but I did twist them. This pot has already started to warm up because I put the dye in, and then I realized that I had not prepared my skeins. And let me tell you, it's not that easy to twist wet skeins. So the pot is now not hot, but getting warmer. And I had it set on high to try and help get the temperature up, but now that I'm going to add my yarn, I turned it down to about 5 because I do not want this pot to boil. And I'm going to put the yarn in, and then I'm going to set a timer so that I can keep checking it to make sure that it does not start to boil. So I've got all my skeins tied up semi-loosely, and I'm going to put all 8 in at the same time. And I'm going to put them in from tip to tip, hoping that when I try and pull them out, it'll be a little bit easier to get them out one at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop them in, and we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I'm going to set the timer for probably about 20 minutes, just so I can keep an eye on it to make sure that it doesn't start to boil. I don't think I'm going to stir it at all, because it did kind of mix up a little bit as I left it while I was winding my yarn up. And I'm not going to push this in. You'll see that some of the ends are up a little bit. Actually, I think I will push it in. Just tuck it down in there. Okay, and we'll come back and see where we are in about 20 minutes. Okay, it's been about 35 minutes, and the water is pretty warm. I'm going to use some insulated gloves to take the each skein out and wring it out here. It's hard to tell at this point if there's any dye left in the pot. I'm going to try and wring it out as much as possible. And I'll take each one out, and then I will come back and we'll look at the water together. Okay, so I've taken the yarn out of the dye pot, and the water still is quite, looks like it has quite a bit of dye in it. Now maybe it's not that much dye, but I think I am going to start with some fresh water before I do the next color, which will be the spruce. No, I'm sorry, it's going to be the teal. So I will get that prepared, and then I will be back to show you the next process. Okay, I have all fresh water, and as it turns out, the water wasn't as full of dye as I had originally thought it was. I think it's the color of the pan that was very deceiving, but I'm glad that I started with fresh water again this time. So I'm going to go ahead and add the teal. I am going to go ahead and use 50 mLs of, or this is cc's. I don't know if that's different than mLs. I think the other one is mLs, but I'm going to go ahead and use 50 cc's of this teal dye, because when I use the same amount of dye in the previous, in doing the samples, it seemed to work out fine. So I'm going to go ahead and continue that process because I am using the same batch of dye. I don't know that I will be able to reproduce this if I try, but I don't really need to reproduce it because this is an over dye process, and I probably won't have this yarn again. So I'm not really worried about reproducing it. And again, I will just squirt it in there and let it get all around. And then I will add my yarn. First, I will turn the temperature back down again. I had the temperature up higher so that it would warm up quicker. And my idea of putting all the skeins in from tip to tip really worked well last time, so I'm going to do that again. And I have rewound these yarn a little bit differently than I did the first time, and a little bit tighter. So hopefully we're going to get the same effect like we had for the samples. So I'm going to go ahead and drop these right in. And this is the teal that we are doing now. The jacquard teal. And I will go ahead and just push that down a little bit. And I will let this this heat up and cook for, again, probably about 35 minutes, keeping an eye on it to make sure that it doesn't boil, and then we'll come back and take this one out. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and take the yarn out again. Again, remember, I am using insulated gloves to take this out of the water. And even when I took it out of the water before using the insulated gloves, it was still quite hot, even through the insulated gloves. So if you do not have insulated gloves, I highly recommend that you get some tongs or something to pull the yarn out of the water and set it on a tray, at least until it cools down slightly where you can wring the water out, because it is quite hot, even through the insulated gloves. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out and get some fresh water going, and then we will put in the spruce, which is next. Okay, now we are ready to put the yarn in for the next batch. I have retwisted these and gently knotted them. I'll just kind of show you the knot, just so that, oops, almost lost one off the edge, just so that we have some different areas exposed. And what I did when I pulled it out of the batch the last time is that I laid it out flat to dry, and it did dry very quickly, so I could handle it a little easier without the insulated gloves after I wrung it out a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. I have already added the 50 cc's of the spruce colorway, same as how we've added all the other ones. And I'm ready to add the yarn in. And I've got all the yarn in a grouping again, just so that I can drop them right in. Here I go. And I'll immediately turn the water down as well, because I had it on high. And it's going to immediately soak down, and I will again set the timer for about 30 to 35 minutes. I will now take out the yarn after the spruce batch. This again, I had tied in knots, so I could have some splashes of color in different areas. So I will take all the yarn out, and then we'll get reset up for the last color, which is the jacquard purple. Okay, so this is our last color, and I have again re-knotted everything so that it has different areas exposed. I did use the same type of knot that I used last time, but I aligned it a little differently so different areas were exposed. And I have already put the dye in the pot, so I'm ready to drop these in, and this will be our last color. So we'll see how it comes out in a few minutes. I will let it sit in here again for about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll be back to find out what the final color is. Okay, we've just finished the final color, and it is just coming out of the dye pot. So I will show you what the final outcome is. Now this will still be wet, but you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. And it's very, very cool. When you take out your knots, you just have to be careful not to get it all tangled up. But this is how it turned out, and it's even cooler than the sample that we did. So I am very happy with how this turned out. The purple showed up a lot more in this one than in the sample, and I'm very excited about this. I can't wait to get them all out and dry and then be able to knit up a sample. Now, when I start to knit this up into a sweater, I will alternate skeins every 2 rows in order to make sure that there's no pooling, and also to make sure that you can't notice when I change to a different skein. So I'm very excited with this, and I'm very I'm not going to be so apprehensive about over dyeing in the future, because this came out so cool. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at bloomingknitter@gmail.com. And thanks so much. Bye. Okay, so wasn't that fun? I so much enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed that process, that over dye process, more than any of the other dyeing that I have ever done. It was so much fun. It was like you didn't have to think. You just did it. There was no really, I mean, I had a plan. I mean, like I had the plan when I did the sample, but it just, you can't control it when you do the kettle dyeing, and that's kind of what I liked. I liked that I couldn't control it. I was just letting it do what it was going to do, and I have to tell you that I love the outcome. It is absolutely amazing. Okay, so in the video I showed you the samples, and I showed you the yarn, but it was wet, so I'm going to show them again. This is the samples that I did. And the bottom one is the original color, and then this is the dye. Now, even with this tiny sample, you can't really see the color variation, and I don't like I said in the video, I'm not sure if it's that the yarn could only absorb so much dye or what. But let me show you the finished skein. Okay, so here is the full skein. Now, again, I don't know if it's just the color. I think it's this blue that just does not show up very well on the camera at all. But I'm hoping that you can see this variation in this yarn. I can't see it very well on the little screen, but oh my goodness, this turned out absolutely gorgeous. I am so excited about it. I have to tell you that I will be much more apt to do this over dye process again in the future, and I probably won't do any samples. I think that kind of was a bit of a waste of time for me. I was just nervous that I was gonna make this huge mess and I was gonna waste these skeins of yarn. But it was so easy, and I mean, there's so many times when you find good deals on discontinued yarn or what have you, but maybe they don't have a color that you like, but you could find a color that you could over dye and make it something that you like. And so I am very tempted to be looking at D-stash and sales and whatnot, because this was fun. Definitely something that I'm going to do again. And I hope you try it as well. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and it was fun.